White Pass and Yukon Route, the celebrated scenic railway of the world. Built of glittering dreams and brute strength by thousands of stampeders during the Klondike Gold Rush, the railway now carries a new stampede. The throngs of adventurers who come to Skagway, Alaska each year to recapture the excitement of one of the world's last grand adventures. To board a White Pass and Yukon excursion is to embark on a ride through history. In the Tlingit Indian language, Skagway meant home of the north wind, where one never breathes the same air twice. True to its name, the Skagway of today breezes with the movement of thousands of visitors every summer. Historic and picturesque, the town delights in its authentic character. Over 200,000 passengers now ride the WP&YR trail each year. More than 10 times the number who went over the White Pass in 1897 and 98. The gay 90s were not all that gay for everyone. The panic of 1893 had left millions of Americans bankrupt, many on the verge of starvation. The times were ripe for the lunacy that followed. July 17th, 1897, 5,000 people swarmed Swabacker's dock in Seattle as the steamer Portland arrives. On board is a motley collection of miners, their meager belongings, and almost 2 tons of gold, brought down from a remote region in Canada whose name would soon be on everyone's lips. From coast to coast, the cry rang out, "Ho for the Klondike!" By the tens of thousands, men and women abandoned their families, mortgaged their homes and businesses to race north, stricken with gold fever. Others spent their entire life savings in their frenzied rush to strike it rich. The Klondikers sailed north along the Canadian-Alaskan border to the very end of the Inside Passage. Here, they were faced with a choice. Climb the famed Chilkoot Pass, which began at Dyea, or the White Pass above nearby Skagway. Both routes rose quickly over the coastal range from Tidewater to Lake Bennett, where the stampeders paused to build boats at the headwaters of the Yukon River system. Their destination lay 600 miles downstream, where the Klondike River flows into the Yukon near the North's newest boomtown, Dawson City. Over 30,000 gold-hungry adventurers passed this way on foot during the next 24 months. Most chose to go over the Chilkoot Pass, a shorter and better-known trail than White Pass. The Chilkoot was also higher and steeper. Fierce competition soon developed to claim freight hauling fees from the hordes of stampeders landing daily, now even hourly, at Skagway and Dyea. When the first boatload of Klondikers splashed ashore on July 26, 1897, they found themselves on a quiet bay in an empty corner at the end of the Inside Passage. By October of that year, just 3 months later, the sprawling boomtown of Skagway boasted 6,000 residents, 15 general stores, 11 saloons, 9 hotels, and 6 lawyers. This mass of gold-hungry adventurers in Skagway attracted numerous con men and bunco artists. The most infamous of Skagway's characters was Jefferson Randolph Soapy Smith. His nefarious ways earned him an early grave, just outside the boundary of Skagway's Gold Rush Cemetery. Frank Reed, who died in a shootout with Sophie, received a more respectable memorial from the grateful citizens. The East Fork of the Skagway River begins at Denver Glacier, a favorite scenic hike of locals and visitors alike. The 3.5-mile trail leads up to Denver Glacier, a popular whistle stop for hikers who detrain in the morning, reboarding in the afternoon for the return trip down the mountain. As the stampede intensified, a survey party was sent into these mountains by the Close brothers, a London financial house interested in investing in the north. They were to investigate the feasibility of a railroad from Tidewater to the headwaters of the Yukon. Sir Thomas Tancred, the chief surveyor, announced his decision. The snows were too heavy, the terrain too steep. The railroad would be impossible. He hadn't counted on a man named Big Mike Heaney, who was to step out of the night and straight into the pages of history. Heaney, an Irish-Canadian railroad contractor, had just finished his own survey of the White Pass when he and Tancred unknowingly checked into the very same Skagway hotel. Heaney's opinion of the hardships ahead? Give me enough dynamite and snooze and I'll build you a road to hell. 2 months later, the first hammers rang out. Blasting at Rocky Point consumed over half the total explosives used during construction of the White Pass route. Its solid granite bedrock led some to say Rocky Point would never be reached. About half-mile up the line from Rocky Point, the route parallels the remains of the Brackett Wagon Road. George Brackett, a former mayor of Minneapolis, improved the original Dead Horse Trail and developed a toll road from Skagway through the forests and onto the pass. Brackett and his road were to cause much anxiety for the railroad developers who feared competition. After parallel development by both road and railway gangs for one season, Brackett's operation, in financial difficulties, was purchased by the railroad.
My father was here in 1897. He had been working on the wagon road. We have 2 letters, one in his own handwriting that he wrote to his parents, my grandparents, one on October 1st, one on December 12th of 1897. That said, among other things, that there was going to be a railroad here. I've heard the stories of this place all my life, but now I can see them. So it's a late date for me, but I'm glad I made it.
The railroad grade used some segments of Brackett's original tollway, and other sections can still be seen from the train as it makes its way up the pass. Clifton, site of a construction camp in 1898, is named for the hanging rock formation over the North Switch and provides a wonderful photo opportunity for those at the rear of the train. On to Alaska with Buchanan. This prominent slogan was painted by the Buchanan boys. George Buchanan was a wealthy Michigan coal dealer who brought disadvantaged young boys on an Alaskan adventure during the 1920s and 30s. Cascading from Goat Lake, 1,800 feet above the rails, Pitchfork Falls fashions its signature outline right below the railroad overpass. Just 2 months into construction, a 100-ton block of granite blasted from the rock face fell on 2 workmen and their mules. The site of this tragic accident became a memorial to those 2 men as well as the 30 others who died during construction. Few died in accidents. Most succumbed to diseases such as pneumonia. Upon viewing the enormous granite block, Big Mike Heaney reportedly said, "No railroad workman could expect a finer monument than that." Shimmering across the valley is Bridal Veil Falls, whose pure, rushing streams begin as ribbons of meltwater from the Cleveland Glacier above. As work on the railroad commenced, the highly impatient gold seekers feared the line would never be finished. In truth, the grade was made at an unheard-of speed for the period, a mere 26 months, an astounding feat given the treacherous mountain terrain and back-breaking labor. To simplify the endeavor, the builders specified a narrow-gauge road. Standard railroad gauge is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Narrow gauge has a rail-to-rail width of 3 feet. Other narrow gauge roads had proven their worth in mountainous regions by lowering construction costs while allowing robust freight loads. A tighter turning radius meant fewer cuts when crossing the arduous terrain. The turmoil and general chaos of the stampede left thousands stranded in Skagway, waiting for money or supplies. Many of these were professional men, lured north by thoughts of adventure and riches. These idle doctors and lawyers became the railroad's first laborers. The WP&YR is often said to have been built by the most highly educated workforce ever assembled. Now, when Skagway's civic leaders waffled on granting a right-of-way for the tracks, they awakened one morning to the sound of steel striking steel. The gang was in full swing, and rails were already running right down the center of Broadway. Glacier Station, at the second switchback over the Skagway River. Formerly a section house, the train makes a whistle stop here for hikers to Lawton Glacier. An immense amount of blasting was needed to cut the roadbed along the sheer rock walls above the Dead Horse Trail. Over 450 tons of explosives were used, mostly black powder. The placements often reached only by hanging perilously over the gorge on ropes to drill the charges. These were men of almost unimaginable courage, risking their lives on a daily basis to build the line, swinging over empty space with their dangerous cargo of explosives. After a blast, the men frequently had to climb back down the hill and clear the bracket road of debris by hand. Progress was slow and tedious. A true international accomplishment, the WP&YR began with British financing, Canadian contracting, and American engineering. An important milestone of the original construction, 16-mile tunnel, was laboriously blasted day and night from both sides of the mountain throughout the winter of 1898 and 99. Bridge builders faced particularly tough winters on the grade. Heavy snow and biting cold froze fingers and toes, sometimes holding the men to shifts of but 1 hour. Like passengers throughout its history, those of today enjoy a thrill as the train crosses 1,000 feet over Glacier Gorge and disappears into the tunnel. This rare film footage of the route, taken by Thomas Edison in 1901, testifies to the courage of the workmen. The WP&YR boasts an impressive rate of climb. The steep 2.6 average grade, which equals a rise of 141 feet per mile. The maximum grade is 3.9, or 206 feet per mile, between Skagway and the summit. Another spectacular highlight is the steel cantilever bridge at 18.6 miles. The steel bridge was the world's tallest cantilever upon construction in 1901. An impressive achievement for any period of history. This remarkable span of Dead Horse Gulch is nearly 100 years old. As the tour guides will tell you, it's 215 feet from the rails to the bottom of the canyon. In 1955, the WP&YR added another engineering innovation to its long list with the launching of the Clifford J. Rogers, the world's first ship built especially for container cargo. Through the years, the White Pass and Yukon Route transportation system has included trains, steamships, planes, trucks, Yukon river boats, and even horse-drawn sleighs. The passengers were warmed by furs, blankets, and charcoal foot heaters as they traveled along. One of the most remarkable narrow-gauge routes in all of North America. This stunning accomplishment has been designated an International Historic Civil Engineering Landmark, sharing company with such marvels as the Eiffel Tower and the Panama Canal. Scene of one of the sadder tales of the lust for riches, Dead Horse Gulch is so named for the 3,000 horses driven to their deaths under back-breaking loads on the Trail of 98. The visible remains of the actual route used by thousands of stampeders on their way to the Klondike. With little horse savvy and tremendous impatience, the Klondikers subjected their animals to extreme brutalities. Jack London said of the scene, "Men shot them, worked them to death, and when they were gone, went back to the beach and bought more. Their hearts turned to stone, those that did not break, and they became beasts, the men of the Dead Horse Trail." At 2,865 feet above sea level, White Pass summit marks the border between Alaska and British Columbia, Canada. Northwest Mounted Police kept an outpost here, collecting custom duties and ensuring that each stampeder brought in a ton of supplies, enough to carry them through the long year ahead. In addition to the difficult terrain, the railroad builders had another huge obstacle to overcome: snow. To lay track in winter, a shovel brigade consisting of hundreds of men had to clear 40-foot snow drifts by hand. Arrival at the summit in February 1899 also heralded the arrival of the route's first rotary snowplow later that year. However, use of these giant steam-driven snowblowers was still dependent on shovel power, as the snow had to be trimmed down level with the top of the rotary. Then the 130-ton monsters were shoved headlong into the towering drifts by fleets of engines. The company's first president, Samuel P. Graves, once said of the rotary crews, "Clearly it's no place for a weakling. Your oil cups freeze, your feet freeze, and you've been on your legs for 48 hours. But you must stick to it like a bulldog and get the trains through. And you do if you're a White Pass rotary man." Following a change to more versatile bulldozers in the early 60s, the labor-intensive and time-worn rotary fleet was retired. Historic preservation is important to the WP&YR, so with a nod to old Samuel Graves, line president Tom King ordered a thorough restoration of the remaining rotary snowplow number 1. A restoration that was no easy task.
Well, we had a lot of trouble getting parts for the thing. We ended up getting a headlight out of China. We got a lubricator out of Colorado, pulled the trucks out, re-welded all the plates, replaced the springs, new brakes. So, I mean, the thing's now complete top to bottom.
Once the rotary was restored, experienced operators were needed. To fill that need, several former White Pass rotary men were called out of retirement to pass along their operating skills to a new generation.
A lot of things is just experience. You know, when you ride it for years, you feel it too. I mean, after you work on it for a few years, you get the feeling, you know how it rides when it's on the rail, and you know you can pick it up through the floor and the steel of whether you're on the ground or not. If you're not watching for trees or rocks in the slides, you can tear the blades off the wheel when you're going in bucking.
It's a dangerous operation if you don't have the right people, especially on the pusher engine, knowing what is happening on the rotary. Because we go by sound.
You have a pilot up there. If he wants the thing to go faster, he just toot ahead. And if he sees something that really wants that wheel to turn faster, he'll toot again.
Just one of only 2 steam-driven narrow-gauge rotary plows remaining in service in all of North America. Rotary number 1 now makes its yearly debut in April, opening the line for summer service. The WP&YR is committed to restoration. Most of the work takes place here at the maintenance facility at 2 Mile. Coaches are carefully dismantled and given a ground-up overhaul. All of these antique passenger coaches, or parlor cars, are named after local lakes. One of these, the Lake Emerald, was built in 1883 and actually predates construction of the railroad. Interest in historic preservation blossomed throughout Skagway. Many shops and businesses are housed in original Gold Rush era buildings. Residents work to maintain modern Skagway's heritage of original structures. Intent on passing along the rich history of the area, the Klondike National Historic Park assists in the preservation of this unique moment in time.
John Anderson is going to open a saloon.
Even prior to the completion of the White Pass Railway, the death knell had sounded for the Chilkoot Trail. Dyea was abandoned, but still draws as visitors both the curious and the adventurous. The curious come to see her moldering remains, contemplate her transience, or pay their respects at the Slide Cemetery, honoring the Stampeders killed in an avalanche on Palm Sunday, 1898. Today's adventurers come to climb the Chilkoot Trail, retracing the steps of the Stampeders, toiling up the Golden Stairs, then tramping into Lake Bennett Station, where the Chilkoot Trail and the White Pass and Yukon Route railway system come together in a dramatic celebration of Gold Rush history. Steam excursions to Lake Bennett are led by locomotive number 73, a Baldwin Mikado Type 282. Restored in 1982, number 73 has over 50 years of service on the White Pass.
Steam engines are special because they're alive. There's nothing quite like when you're riding behind a steam engine, you see adults and kids alike who are just mesmerized by the rhythm of the locomotive and the thrill of being on the rails.
arrival at Lake Bennett wasn't the end of the trail for the Klondikers. Dawson was still 600 miles away by boat, a boat which would have to be built by hand. Over 30,000 of them did just that over the winter of 1897 and 1898. St. Andrew's Church, also built during that long winter, lost its entire congregation when the ice went out that spring. The building still stands to this day.
Oh yeah, they all got personalities. Some are better than others. Some fire better than others.
What would you say this was?
This one's a good one.
This is a good one.
Yep.
Well, it has a long ride of a nice 81 miles behind steam. It's nice uphill, lots of good grades, lots of good scenery, lots of good people that run this railroad. I thought the staff, only 8 of them on the train, was just absolutely marvelous.
It's beautiful, magnificent.
The scenery is spectacular. The people in the town of Skagway are incredibly friendly. It's a beautiful place to visit. The railroad is tremendous. It's built in some of the most difficult terrain I've seen, and the engineering feat is incredible. The railroad is nothing but first class.
Fantastic experience. Loved it.
There's a train, it's rolling down the rails. Past frontier towns turned upside down on forgotten trails. Through the forests on a northern quest, riding on the White Pass Express. And the ghosts of ancient miners in search of mother loves. The hunters and the loggers, they're still toiling in the cold. Riding on the White Pass Express. Riding on the White Pass Express.